All right, and I guess I'll call us to order at 6:02 p.m. Uh, so starting with roll call, start with Eric.
Eric Vestal, Assistant City Traffic Engineer.
Cheryl Hammond, Vice Chair CATC.
Nathan Levin, member.
Kenny Kennedy Schultz, Chair.
DKS Associates.
Scott Manser with DKS Associates.
Carol Hall, City Traffic Engineer.
And Vanessa Strode.
Good.
All right, guess first things first, I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but do we want to approve, or excuse me, any adjustments desired to the agenda for today, or shall we approve it as is?
I have a request, if possible, for staff to give us an update on the 4 vacancies and whether anyone has applied or what the timeline might be for filling those vacancies.
Yes, I was planning to do that under commission discussion.
Oh, great, thank you.
That works for me.
I'm sorry.
Then, desire to just pass this as is, are we all good?
Motion to pass.
Yeah, I'll second it. Unanimous consent, so we should be good. I haven't seen the minutes from last time, though. I may have just missed them, but that happens to me a lot.
They should have been in the packet.
Yeah, then that's just me.
There.
Yep. Well, then that's my mistake. Any corrections noted in the minutes from the last meeting? All right. Well, then hearing none, I'll raise a motion to pass them as submitted. Any opposition? Yes.
No,
Right.
sorry.
And that also passes unanimously. Reminding me of unanimous consent was maybe one of the best things we did. Makes life a little bit easier. We do have 2 public commenters who are not commenting on a specific agenda item, so I'll just call them up in the order that they signed in, starting with Dylan from Ward 6. Please make your comment.
Yeah, just here to see what this is all about. I actually have applied for one of the vacant positions, so I've listened to the past year's worth of your guys' recording, so I know a little bit about what's happening, but first time showing up first.
Sure.
Do we need to ask some questions?
We do.
My name is Beth Schmidt. Do you have any areas that you have specific concerns that you'd like to share with us, or interests you have at the city of Salem and transportation?
I mean, transportation, as someone who walks, bikes, rides the bus, and also drives the city, everything is under the sun in terms of transportation. I'm just hoping to see that we continue to make improvements here in the city. I'm in Nesca in terms of the neighborhood, so we don't have maybe as much going on historically in our neighborhood as I think maybe some people in the community would like to see in terms of just improvements happening. I know that Savage is, I believe, getting some speed cushions soon, I think, which will be nice, but yeah, just wanted to see what else we can happening.
Cool. How long have you lived in Salem and have you lived in other cities? And do you see opportunities for improvement or growth?
Let's see, I've lived in Salem now for not quite 5 years now.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
for a little bit, and in terms of, I've been in Wilsonville, Portland, Tigard, just kind of, a handful of different areas. I know obviously there's a pretty big difference between Portland and Salem, in terms of funding, in terms of culture, in terms of lots of things. So I'm not necessarily saying that we replicate them, but there are definitely some things of interest in those areas. And also just some nifty ideas from international travel that I've seen that would be lovely to sometime make it over this way.
Well, cool. I'm really glad that you came and you're here to share because I think That's what really builds the community is everybody who's willing to come and share their part. So welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Any other questions or comments from the other members? All right. Well then, thank you, Dylan, for showing up. I'm sure in due time, staff will review and make recommendations as appropriate under their processes. So we look forward to seeing what the outcome is. But regardless, thank you for taking the time to show up. Second commenter is Ben from Ward 1.
I didn't have any comments, so this is general sign-in sheet.
Yeah, honestly, it's probably the comment that you're attending is valuable and it's in and of itself, so we'll just let it be.
Presence is welcomed, Ben. Thank you.
It's always glad to, are you still on the planning commission these days or have you moved on?
I am.
Yeah.
Still on it.
Always welcome to, always glad to hear the planning commissioners paying attention every so often to other things.
Ethan's here too, he's on the planning commission.
At any rate, with that, I'll move past public comment and action items. Number one, I'll turn it over to Scott with DKS.
I'm going to share the PowerPoint really quickly here, and then I'll give you just a little bit of context before we hand it off to Scott to cover the bulk of the presentation. Okay. So we are sharing tonight an update on our downtown bicycle and pedestrian safety study. We're currently in the process of refining recommendations. That includes some coordination with the Oregon Department of Transportation on what they will support for their facilities within the study area, which Scott will highlight when he gets to that. And are beginning to share those recommendations and next steps for the project. So this is our second outreach. We did an overview to the Main Street Association last week. But we're also planning to reach out to the Camden Neighborhood Association, the Downtown Advisory Board, and going back to the stakeholder committee for the Salem Main Street Association, all of which will culminate in a presentation to council on final recommendations at the end of the summer, September. So we're really just here tonight to share our recommendations and answer questions that you may have about what's being proposed as part of this effort. And just a little bit, because I'm not certain this has been in front of you all before. So to provide like a little bit of background for where this came from. In February 2024, City Council made a motion directing staff to initiate a study looking at bicycle and pedestrian safety in the downtown area specifically. So that was February 2024. Took us about a year to get through all of the contracting and scoping elements of it, and then have been, Scott and his team have been working on analysis for roughly the last 9 months, including some alternatives analysis and looking at different recommendations. So that is kind of the culmination of how we got here. And then after we can do that outreach this summer and share back to council what we found, we'll be working on a plan for implementation. We expect, as you'll see, there's a lot of corridors in the downtown that we'll be looking to touch. So we expect that that's going to be a phased approach and are planning to begin rolling that out this fall. So really just wanting to get in front of you all now, hear some feedback, answer questions, make sure you're all up to speed. So I'll let Scott go through the presentation, and then once we get to the end, him and Eric will be able to answer questions that you all have.
Okay.
Sure.
There we go. Sorry. All right.
Probably want to resume if I had to guess.
Oh, did I stop it?
I would press the resume button there, kind of upperish middle, the play button.
Oh, right next to the share button.
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, so I'm just gonna kind of give a general overview of the project goals and objectives. As Kara mentioned, the council is really interested in improving safety for people walking and biking in downtown. And one of the goals they wanted to accomplish was reducing travel speeds in the study area. And the study area, you can see, is that orange line that kind of bounds Division Street to the north, a portion of Union Street, all the way to the south, where you have Trade and Ferry, and then Bellevue Street. Front Street to the west, and 12th Street to the east. Also, the goal was to reduce the travel speeds, but we also, as we're looking at is there any low-cost safety improvements that jump out and that we can identify and recommend? And then also just continue to build on the city's ongoing planning efforts, the Vision Zero, trying to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes and safety. So we also went through a best practices, looked at documentation for this type of safety work in Portland, Seattle, many other large cities, and some of the kind of key best practices that we found by looking at those is really looking to prioritize pedestrian and bike safety through leading pedestrian intervals. That's you'll see LPI quite often through this, and no turn on red. And I'll share you some of the safety issues where we've identified at specific locations. Reducing downtown progression speeds to 20 miles per hour on the city streets. And I have some speed information. I can show you what the speeds are today and kind of what we're recommending to progress those speeds downtown. Applying the leading pedestrian interval at additional locations. The city, I think they, and Eric might know the number, I think you guys implemented about 50 of the project intersections with leading pedestrian intervals, and there's still a handful that haven't been done. As well as looking at no turn on red factors, looking at crash history, where heavy pedestrian movements are that conflict with left and right turns in the downtown. And also looking at bicycle progression on bicycle corridors, looking at flashing yellow arrow, permissive to help protect when you have permissive movements across bicycle and pedestrian movements, enhanced warning signage, and exclusive pedestrian phases. So those are some of the key best practices that we have implemented as we were looking at the study area, looking at our traffic evaluation and recommendation. One thing to kind of caveat and note is a lot of the streets in downtown are actually owned or under ODOT jurisdiction. So I kind of highlighted some of those: Front Street, Trade Street and Ferry, Pringle Parkway and Bellevue Street, Commercial Street, to Marion Street, and also the Marion Street Bridge. So those are the ODOT. And you'll see a lot of comments in there that, final recommendations will need to be discussed and approved by ODOT. And Karen and I and our team has had several already meetings with ODOT, and they're definitely, they're being very flexible and trying to do the best to improve pedestrian bike safety in the downtown. So we're pretty excited about that work with ODOT. So I'll go through, I have slides for each of these locations, but there's 5 intersections that really jumped out we couldn't present everything that we found at this meeting, but kind of wanted to hit on the key ones. But Commercial and Marion, there was 88 vehicle crashes. And when we talk about these number of crashes, it's over the last 5 years of data. So that runs between 2019 and 2023. Is that right, Jess? Okay. And a lot of the ODOT data that we get to evaluate these intersections usually lags a year to 2. So like I said, right now all of our data is through 2023. And when we get to the State and Front intersection, there was a recent pedestrian fatality that wasn't in our data, but we are aware of that and kind of considered that in our evaluation. So I hit on these later, so I'll go kind of slide by slide. But this is the Commercial Marion intersection. This is the Marion Street Bridge on this approach. So there's the very heavy right turn. So there was some pedestrian and bike crashes at this location. All due to the kind of the right turns drivers. And what we were seeing in the data is when you have a car that pulls up, when you have side-by-side right turns, a pedestrian starts to walk and the outside car doesn't see the pedestrian crossing. And so they're looking the wrong way, right? They're looking for the gap in traffic on Marion Street and they're not looking for the pedestrian. So this is one of the issues that we saw. So we're recommending our proposed recommendations. So we still have to approve this by ODOT, but we're looking at a leading pedestrian interval here and also a no turn on red for that southbound right. So we'll be working with ODOT to discuss that further to improve the safety there. Liberty and Ferry. So this is the conference center right here. So this is that heavy dual left. And I want to back up. There was a downtown study that was done, I think back in 2012. And in that study, we identified the city had 13 locations with dual turn lanes. And that's where a lot of the pedestrian issues were happening in the downtown. And the city's done a phenomenal job. I think they've eliminated all but 4 of those with different projects. And so
Sorry, how many were there?
I think there was 13, and I think they eliminated all but 4 in the downtown through different projects to improve the pedestrian safety. And so some of these are, you know, if you're familiar in the downtown, the ones that haven't been eliminated are the challenging ones where you have really heavy congestion, really heavy movements. And so this one, there was 10 pedestrian crashes for that high volume pedestrian crossing between the garage and the downtown and the conference center. And this is all due to the left turns. And so our recommendation, well, our proposed safety recommendations or considerations was to consider the no left turn on red. And as we looked at that, those of you that know that there's some really heavy congestion, long queues there. And ODOT was not comfortable in our discussions to make this change or to consider that no turn on red because of what it would do to congestion and queuing. And so the city and ODOT are continuing that last bullet. It's not dead, but we're gonna continue to coordinate with ODOT and come up with a solution for this in the future. But ODOT was not supportive of the recommendations at this location. So commercial and ferry, again, this is the conference center on this location. This is where we used to have dual left turn lanes. And this is one of the dual turn lanes that the city got rid of previously. But we had some, we didn't have any major bicycle and pedestrian crashes, but it's a very high pedestrian used intersection. And so one of our recommendations here was to go ahead and implement leading pedestrian interval. I should explain to you what leading, and some of you probably know what leading pedestrian interval is, but that's where you get the walk, a pedestrian gets the walk and you hold the traffic that would, so I'll just give you an example. A leading pedestrian interval, if you have the through vehicles that are gonna get a green here, the pedestrians that are gonna cross here and here would get the walk for 3 seconds is how the city typically runs it. And that way, the car is leaving the corner and the cars can visibly see those pedestrians. So that's one of, in the implementation that the city did, this was one of the intersections that wasn't implemented. So we're recommending putting that, and again, we'll be kind of communicating that with ODOT and getting their final approval on that. This is the dual right turn from Front Street going southbound on Commercial Street. Again, similar to what I talked about Marion Street, you have a lot of pedestrians that we just had 2 at this location. But pedestrian crashes here, and we looked at the no turn on red for the eastbound. And this is one that ODOT will consider, and they've asked for some additional analysis for us to do. So we're continuing our coordination to look at, and again, that what happens on the no turn on red is they have a red. So the pedestrian has the walk, they're crossing, but because they can turn around on red, again, they're looking for that gap in traffic and they're not really paying attention to those pedestrians. Stayed in front, this is the one I mentioned to you that there was I think about a year ago, there was a pedestrian crossing in this crosswalk and a car coming out of the side street and hit a pedestrian and killed him. And that wasn't in our data. So in the data set that we had, there was no reported pedestrian and bicycle crashes at this intersection. But one of the safety issues we identified, and I'm sure if any of you have made this right turn in the downtown, it's very challenging. You have the traffic coming around the corner around Front Street. The sight distance is not good. So we feel like, you know, from a risk standpoint, this is a good recommendation to change. This again is one that ODOT is open to allowing, you know, supporting this change with some additional information that we're going to be providing to them. So those are the 5 intersections. Do you want me to wait till questions or should I pause for a minute?
I was gonna say that we'll wait until the end of the questions. I was actually gonna recommend that once you finish, take it all the way back to the beginning and we'll probably handle questions slide by slide, just seeing the questions that have been popping into people's eyes.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying. So and these are some locations. And I'm sure you've seen a few of these in the downtown. I think it's on Church and High. But some of the higher crash intersections, we had recommended some low cost enhanced signage at some high use pedestrian and bicycle locations. So we've identified Liberty and Ferry, these enhanced signage, Liberty and Ferry, Commercial Center, Commercial Marion, and I'm sorry, those were the pedestrian signs, and then also the yield to bike signs at Commercial and Union and Commercial and Trade. So that kind of covers the safety portion of it, and this is still safety, but this is more the signal timing and progression section. So this is just sharing a little bit about this left figure is showing the existing speeds on the ODOT facilities. And so the orange means the existing posted speed is 30 miles per hour, and the red is existing 35 miles per hour. And in some of our early discussions with ODOT was willing for us in our progression analysis to consider reducing the speeds on their facilities to 5 by dropping those by 5 miles per hour. So for example, on Bellevue Street, it's 30 miles per hour today. They said that they would be willing to drop that down to 25 miles per hour. And on Front Street, for example, we could drop those down to from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. On the city streets, you can see the green are the existing 25 mile per hour streets. The orange are existing 30 mile per hour streets in the downtown. And so what we're looking to do, I think I have another slide. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. I start telling you before I even go to the next slide. So when we looked at the alternatives in the downtown, there was 3 alternatives we looked at. We looked at baseline conditions. That's leaving everything exactly how it exists today, because we need that as a comparison to be able to tell you how are these other alternatives working. We looked at another option, an alternative 1, where we looked at leaving all the speeds how they are today, but updating the local timings and looking at improving the progression. Because we wanted to be able to say, well, how, if we keep the speeds we are versus what we're proposing, the slower speeds, how do those compare? And then we have a third alternative, alternative 2, which is the third alternative that we evaluated, was the reduced speed. So on all the ODOT facilities, we assumed reducing the speeds by 5 miles per hour. And on all the city streets, we dropped it from 25 to 20, with the exception of 12th Street. 12th Street's a little bit different. It's 30 today. And so we identified and looked at 25 miles per hour on 12th Street. So those are the alternatives we looked at. And this is just showing, I mean, one of the things we found is we looked at, this is the baseline conditions. And you can see this is the traffic flow based on the speed, the posted speed that's out there today. And this is the existing model. And in our alternative 1, you can see there, and this is Center Street. We did this on every single corridor, looking at the different traffic flows along the corridor. You can just see, you know, we were able to improve the progression by, you know, looking at those, by changing some of the offsets and looking at the evaluation along Center Street. And I'm going to show you one. So this one was the baseline and the alternative 1. So it was, again, we didn't change the speed. So you can see the flow, the speeds of the travel are consistent between the two. Now you can see here we have the existing speed. So alternative 1 and our alternative 2, which is our reduced speeds. And this is Center Street. So as you can see Center Street, you know, we have pretty good progression here, as well as progression on this side. So they're very similar when it comes to Center Street, but there's a couple of the streets when we get to it that are very different. So this is an example of Commercial Street in the downtown. So if you're a car and you're driving through Commercial Street southbound at Division Street, as you go down, you can see, well, you stop at Union Street. I drive this, and this is very consistent with what I hit in the morning. And then you can see you wait at the stop sign, and then you come down, and then you hit another signal at Chemeketa Street, and then you hit. So you can see there's a lot of stops going on based on those current speeds. Well, when we reduce the speeds because of the block spacing in the downtown, you can see we actually reduce the travel speed. We actually reduce the posted speed, but we're actually able to improve the progression on Commercial Street. And you see if you enter it at Division Street, and as you go through, you can pretty much drive. If you stay the speed limit, you're going to be able to drive pretty much through the downtown on Commercial Street. And I was going to say, alternative 1 provides similar progression, but we really were able to improve. Alternative 2 provided improved operations compared to alternative 1. One of the things we also recommended is Union Street and Chemeketa Street. Those are both bikeways identified in the by the city, and so on those we're actually going to progress those at 15 miles per hour. We're actually progressing bikes on those facilities, not cars. So you can see how we've identified reducing those and setting progression on Union Street in both directions for bicycles. And one of the things about the reduced speed limits too is we've set we've set the green band in the downtown as you go on the offsets to the start of green. And so what that's gonna improve as well is, not everyone's gonna want to just drive 20 miles per hour in the downtown. You're gonna have the person that wants to drive 25 miles per hour. And what's gonna happen is if they're waiting at the red and they get a green, if they drive over 20 miles per hour, they're gonna hit a red at the next signal. And then when that turns green, if they drive 25 miles per hour, they're gonna come up and they're gonna hit the red and they're gonna come over. And so again, it's actually going to benefit the drivers in the downtown to actually drive 20 miles per hour, and they will be able to hit each signal. If they try and speed, they're gonna hit reds. And a lot of agencies that when they make these changes, they'll actually put up some informational signage saying, signals progress to 20 miles per hour. So you're actually telling people if you drive 20 miles per hour, you're gonna go through the signals as best you can. Miss anything? So again, this is our alternative recommendation. We are on Front Street. We're looking at identifying, we've reduced the ODOT speeds on theirs by 5 miles per hour. On the downtown city streets, the green is showing where we've assumed progression speeds of 20 miles per hour. 12th Street was the one that we left at 25 miles per hour. And then Union Street and Chemeketa, it would be at 15 miles per hour. And I would assume that once the city's currently working on the Union Street Bikeway project, which is the segment between Summer Street around to Marion to connect up to the multi-use path on 12th Street. And I would guess that once those signals are updated and improved and that bikeway is implemented, we would look at extending that 15 miles per hour on Union Street around to connect up to that path. But at this point, that project hasn't, I think it's still maybe 2-3 years out before it's constructed. And so this is kind of our kind of the summary. The reduced speeds will support the council goal. It'll improve pedestrian bicycle safety in the downtown. It really improves system-wide progression. The green band really will discourage the speeding. We've recommended some targeted safety improvements with no turns on red, leading pedestrian intervals, and enhanced warning signage. We're able to take our model and compare between existing and future, and we had some significant decreased delay and carbon emissions by reducing those speeds, because you're able to still progress and have fewer stops in the system. And also just enhance accessibility in the downtown for pedestrians and bikes. I think the final thing I will say that a lot of times you think about delay, the one thing that will be increased is actually cars' travel times, because when you're entering the system, you're going at a slower speed. So technically your travel time will increase slightly, but overall, your overall delay, your number of stops will improve. That's it. So I'll go ahead and go back to the beginning and people have.
Yeah, let's maybe start with the first slide. So I actually did have a question right off this top with the study area, and that's probably as much a question for staff as it is for DKS. To me, it seems a little interesting to leave off that section of what is that, Commercial, Liberty, and High, that's south of Ferry and Trade. You've got Old City Hall, which will be reopened there. You've got the library there. Those are, and a handful of parks as well. Those seem like bike and pedestrian generating facilities. I'm surprised that they're not included. Even if there's not a lot of intersections there, it still seems odd to leave them out. That's just my general observation.
Part of this study area was determined by where funding was coming from. So funding came from urban development. So a third of it came from public works transportation funding. The other 2/3 came from urban development. So we did need to stay very focused on what's kind of defined as our downtown core as part of that.
Is there an option to have perhaps bumped up only the public works funding to incorporate that work area, or is that a little bit too finicky?
I think at this point, the scope is what it is, just where we're at in the process. But when we get into other updates for you all, I'll be sharing some other citywide efforts that are gonna look outside of just this downtown area. And we'll be looking at some of the same sort of strategies we've talked about here on that broader city scale.
Okay. Any other questions on what I consider to be just broad project scope from CATC?
Okay, well. Not all of us have the detailed transportation backgrounds, so I think my questions come sometimes be. But I know that ODOT is responsible for the areas that it's responsible for. But in an effort that Salem would like to attain Vision Zero, do they not get the opportunity to say these are our laws and they have to then abide by them? Who supersedes who in that situation? That we would want to keep our citizens and visitors safer. So I would think that that would be a greater value to the citizens of Salem. Because they do run their highways through here, and I think that it should be respected that they would want to do that. Yes.
ODOT has authority over their facilities, so the city can't supersede that. ODOT is also, safety, right, for bikes and pedestrians is also a goal for them. And that's part of their willingness to come to the table and our efforts to bring them along in these conversations is because even though it is their jurisdiction, it's everybody's community members that are using it. So we have to continue to have those conversations and collaborate with them. And they have been engaged in this. And as Scott shared, have been supportive of some of the recommendations that are continuing that conversation with us moving forward, how we implement those. So when it's their facility, they do have the jurisdiction and the final say, but we are working to partner with them and bring them along in that conversation.
Okay, great.
I guess to follow up on Beth's question, is their facility purely the vehicular lanes, or are the sidewalks also considered ODOT facilities?
It varies on ODOT facilities throughout. I think on the Parkway, they have more. So in this area, I believe they have the public right of way. It varies in some cases, on some streets, it varies literally block to block in terms of what they have jurisdiction over.
I will say, if we would have gone to ODOT 5 years ago and talked to them about reducing the speeds even by 5 miles per hour, they would have said, not a chance. And so they're slowly coming along when it comes to bicycle and pedestrian safety, especially in downtowns, and trying to be more flexible.
Is it due to fatalities or the data, or what do you feel is?
Part of it is actually the changing nationally about speed and the importance of slower speeds.
Okay.
So my observation is just that probably the ODOT corridors are what were originally intended to be vehicular. Making, letting cars get through without having to go through downtown and have encounter these things. And as time has passed, as the waterfront was developed, when I was a student, that was a gravel lot, dark, nothing there. And so the bypass was there with no lights or anything, solely as a way for cars to move through. So there's sort of a weird, attention of those roads were created to facilitate vehicular access and literally bypass. And now they aren't so much operating that way. So there's a natural tension with use and modes of transportation, which is frustrating to me in some ways. But there you go.
It is still confusing to me why southbound Front Street became a single lane instead of remaining 2-lane because of the fact that it was designed and built for a bypass. And I recall the conversation that by slowing the speed, they were going to be able to get more cars through. And that may be viable, but then they cut the travel lanes in half. And I don't understand what the point of the bypass is. You're either trying to get the vehicles around the downtown or you're not. Pick a side.
And then there's always the bridge question, which many of those intersections with dual turn lanes are designed to help get traffic through in a way that doesn't block everyone else, I guess.
Yeah, I think we can move on. Probably one more. Any questions on the ODOT coordination or the ODOT question beyond what we've already covered? I guess one thing that has always, I guess two questions actually. First, the dark lines on Commercial and Liberty, are those also like an alternate state route or are they just local arterials?
I think those are just local arterials.
Okay. So the predominant pathways then, if you're looking at it from that point of view, is I think 22 joins with 99E. And so got people either going north-south coming out of that way or east-west, skirting around the downtown heart. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it did seem like, and I guess we can just go forward a slide because it's gonna show up. It did seem like a lot of them are either centered on intersect at where we're meeting up with the ODOT system or people going across the bridge taking Center and Marion. Like that seems to be almost exclusively what we're looking at here. Like, is that a broader sort of looking for observation that seems to hold water? That you're dealing with because a lot of these would be the high traffic intersections.
I do have a question on the pedestrian access safety crossing. In the areas where you have those double turn lanes that are the primary pedestrian exposure areas, is it possible to add signage, which is no turn on red at those points where that signage is activated by a pedestrian hitting the button wanting to cross?
Yes, absolutely.
Because if the pedestrian could activate an additional set of signals saying to traffic, I'm here, and in front of those lanes, it said, it was flashing, no turn on red, pedestrian crossing, then it seems like you might be able to continue with the double turn lane and add a layer of safety for pedestrians.
Yep. And that's actually what ODOT just did right by the Union Gospel Mission building. When you're going from Commercial onto Front, they added one of those no right turn on red for the right turn lane for when the pedestrian is.
Right.
And
Yeah, and
that lights up.
And I use that turn to avoid the downtown frequently, and that's normal. That's easy to deal with. So if that solution is viable, then maybe that's a good way to accommodate the double turn lanes.
I also did wonder if a just extended beyond 3-second pedestrian lead would help, particularly with the double. You want to get them further into the intersection to increase visibility, because at 3 seconds you might be in the first lane. But even if a driver is looking ahead properly, if they're just looking into their lane and the pedestrian's not there, they're literally getting set up with that 3-second lead. I think the timing works out where they're literally being set up to be right in front of the car when they turn. So it feels like a longer lead might be helpful there, realizing that the downside of that is people are more likely to try to turn early. So that feels like it would have to be paired with a no turn on red solution.
And also just the timing with pedestrians, you never know. Sometimes they're right there, and so that advanced time will get them out further. But if they're not right there and they come a couple of seconds into it, it isn't really as helping them as much as well.
So I had a similar comment. I guess And thank you wherever you've got a leading pedestrian interval, thank you. There's some on commercial at Rural and Hoyt, thank you. Now there's one coming out of Minto Park. That's my bike commute, that I did to get here barely on time. So that one's new, I think. So thank you, thank you. But I will echo something that Kenneth said, which is that I feel like 3 seconds puts a pedestrian smack in the middle of that first lane. It doesn't get them past the first lane. And I feel like just for a single turn conflict, 5 seconds would be much safer. And if it's a double turn, then it's gotta be enough to, I mean, it should be enough to get a pedestrian across those lanes, not into the middle of them where they can get hit.
Well, is the goal to, because my understanding of the goal of the leading timer is to literally put them in the middle, because if they're still sitting right there at the intersection, they're not visible to most turners, where if they're in the middle, they're right where you're looking to make your turn. And so that's part of it.
I understand that intention,
Yeah.
but as a pedestrian myself, I feel like all it's doing is putting me in the middle of the lane, and it's not really making me any safer than standing at the curb.
I've definitely had to take the view, because I'm a downtown pedestrian a lot for myself. I make use of many of the businesses down there during the week and weekends. There's a lot of you have to be willing to be in the street to be visible and be out for yourself. It's not fun. I don't like being a pedestrian in a or in a car-centric system, but that is kind of where we are starting.
As a driver, it feels to me like pedestrians who are right here, there's a lot of blind spot right here. And I do think the LPI has helped me a lot in terms of predicting what the pedestrian is doing. Like I don't have to wait to see if they're walking. And I think it's helps people from jumping that just a little bit because they actually see the pedestrian. So I understand the physical feeling of, exposure. But for visibility for the driver, I think that has helped.
Well, and to get to what I said earlier, that doesn't correlate to that. If you're on the far right lane trying to turn right, they are still literally kind of invisible because you are literally tracking with that first car as they're turning. They're always blind to you. So like I've had experiences where if you're not, the one thing I hate as a person in a far right turn lane is when the person in the left turn lane is not courteous and a little bit back, and I try to edge forward to be able to see, and if they're all the way forward, I can't see, and then I'm blind. And I've not hit a pedestrian. That would have obviously ruined my life, theirs as well. But also out of curiosity, how many are those all vehicular, are those all fatalities, or are they any sort of incident?
Yeah, this is just hitting with a crash.
So having not done that, I can also say I've come disturbingly close a couple of times, just again, because I can't see a damn thing around people.
Which means it's a near miss, but they don't record that data. But.
Yeah, I know.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think first I'd like to acknowledge the city of Salem. Absolutely. After the death of Denise Van Dyke, who was a member on the CATC, and her father was an engineer with the city and had history, I would like to say thank you to the city of Salem, both city councilors and the mayor and Kevin Hopman and Tony Martin and everyone who knew Denise Van Dyke. She was hit and killed right outside of our work at State and High Street. And that was my first experience when I was in the position as a Safe Routes to School coordinator, teaching pedestrian safety to our students in Salem and Kaiser. That had a huge impact on my life. And then did they do the LPI? So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for doing the LPI, because I'm hopeful that that means we are having some pedestrians who are being saved, because we didn't even have it here. And that was December 2022 that Denise died. And other cities already had LPI. So we have to take into consideration that these fatalities are what is making progress take place in the city of Salem. So I'm gonna praise that first. And I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth, right? But there are just there are stark realities that come with the downtown corridor. We don't have streets that are blocked up, you know, for pedestrian traffic only. We don't have people who are willing to negotiate and talk about things that are happening that can be changed. Where I think a road diet could happen and things could take place that it'd be nicer for citizens and tourists and families to be able to move around with ease. Because we have to cater to cars and ODOT has a highway that's moving through lots of traffic and dump trucks and log trucks and like, this is our reality. So how do we find a compromise to protect the citizens who live here and people who visit? And I don't know if that they're gonna find the compromise right away. And we can go on about the LPI in the how many seconds, but first and foremost, I'm gonna go and hopefully encourage every positive thing that they can do first. And hopefully everybody's on board with that. So an LPI to me, I'm not gonna complain about 3 or 4 seconds. I'm gonna say thank you and go forward because any progression we can make in saving people, I'm here for. So, they're just not gonna go, okay, we're gonna close down 2 blocks of the downtown corridor because we're gonna have pedestrian only traffic here. Nobody's gonna go do that here. It's too difficult to make change like that here that quickly. Salem doesn't change that quickly here. And so, yes, you should keep advocating for it, but like, we have to agree upon what's the carrot, what is it? If we all agree on what's gonna be keeping us safe. So that we're not gonna get off the task, because I know we all care about this and we all want to see our citizens safe. So I'm hopeful that we can have a discussion about specific areas and really focus in on those areas and agree upon something so that the city sees us as a commission that they value, that we've taken the time, we've discussed, and we've agreed upon areas that we would like to see improved. And I think that's where we're probably gonna get the most progression possible. And I hope that we can look at it and say, okay, look at the data. And then decide how we want to go forward with this, because I think if we sit here and argue about all the many different things, we're going to lose sight of what we can do here as a commission for work and go forward in a positive way.
Nate?
I do have a question. In the locations that you have the leading pedestrian 3-second timer, are those locations, do they have the button for crossing to activate? Or are they just set up with the signal camp?
Yeah, they're all, we don't have buttons downtown, they're all pre-timed, so they're all, whether there's a pet there or not, they're gonna come on every cycle, all
Okay.
day, 24/7.
All right, in the current locations that are the higher traffic areas, I would suggest to the committee that we consider a recommendation to extend that for the leading pedestrian timer from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. And see if that has any consequence to incidents. You already have current and active data. And it, obviously it's a minor step, but I assume it's something that could be done.
I might, Nathan, I might recommend, because one comment I was going to make is if there's one thing that troubled me about the presentation and what ultimately came out was Liberty and Ferry, which had the highest volume. I would be curious about volume over average pedestrian trips per day to see if that's also proportionately high or just looks high because of a high volume. But that question aside, that one has an existing LPI and there is no alternative that appears viable. You are considering eliminating the second right turn, but frankly, there is no other way from northbound from South Salem to get onto Ferry. From a vehicular point of view, that's probably just an unacceptable alternative. ODOT's probably right to nix that. There has to be some other alternative that's presented. I don't think that a safety I don't think that a safety report that fails to address the largest safety issue that is noted in the report is very successful.
Well, I want to kind of bring us back to the charge of this project, which was the low-cost, quickly implementable solutions. So that's the signal timing, that's looking at the progression speeds, that's the leading pedestrian intervals. And I think council's desire with that was, to some of the points Beth made, there are fatalities, there are crashes happening now. And we are navigating a mix of constraints in this area, the uses, the users that we're trying to serve in this area. And then we layer in our funding constraints. And if we don't look at some of the low cost, what can we do now? We will be in a position of not being able to do anything right away until we can gather that funding. So while it doesn't have a specific recommendation in this, it did bring ODOT back to the table to start those conversations about that. And it will be a recommendation as part of this to continue down that path that positions us to apply for grants, to look at the funding, to make the larger solutions. So it's this battle of what can we do now? It may not address everything, but we are making steps in the right direction and confirming those needs for where do we need to look for future safety investments. And ODOT has been through this process. They recognize like this has always been a challenging location. There have been things looked at historically at that location. None of them were deemed feasible. This presents an opportunity to start to revisit that and identify that safety solution. So it's not acknowledging the need, not identifying it. It's just saying we were tasked with low cost, what can we do now? Versus getting into some, because that's been part of the challenge is that historically we identified large capital projects that took us 10 to 15 years to build, and then we didn't make incremental progress. An effort like this allows us to make some of that incremental progress towards addressing the high priority locations while identifying where there are still those future needs that are still going to cost money and that we still need to plan for and design and get on the page to advocate for. So totally agree that it's a high priority location from a lot of areas. We just need to document that and to start that conversation and not put off doing what we can other places for that.
But to be perfectly blunt here and honest, I believe now 3 members of CATC have proposed what I would say is at least something that is worth considering. Bumping that from 3 to 5 seconds could improve efficacy. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't something that was brought to the table. That seems like a simple, low-cost option.
It's free.
Well, it's not free.
I
It
mean, all you
costs
have to
money
do is
to,
program things, but you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to install anything. It's just changing the timing, which slows, a motor vehicle moving through is going to be slowed by 2 seconds per intersection.
And that changes the whole progression
Yes.
model. Right, so every second you change the pedestrian.
Yeah.
LPI.
Yeah.
It changes the progression through.
well, but to be frank, that's something that could have been considered and put into the model. It would have been interesting to see if that winds up creating more of those stair steps or if people are still able to get a throughput with a 3-second delay, second node in, that could make everything really awful, or maybe it just means that a larger proportion of vehicles get slowed down, but not a plurality. There does seem to just be a general benefit to slowing the traffic down, and that to me was pretty marked.
I was gonna add 2 things, one about ODOT and Liberty and Ferry. One of the comments they said is there's the All Roads Transportation Safety that has $27 million a year for local agencies and ODOT to submit safety funds. And the Region 2 traffic engineer said that that's a great location that they're gonna be evaluating and looking for some of those higher cost options. So that was first question. The second one was about we had discussions about the LPI of 3 to 5. And the discussions that we were given and kind of discussed was the city just implemented the 3-second LPI. How long ago?
A year and a half.
A year and a half ago. And so the safety data hasn't come out. And so they wanted to see how is that 3-second, because if we go and then switch it to 5, we don't really know what's changing. And so we really want to look at it and kind of this for Kara was involved, but Kevin kind of said, I wanna get at least a year's data of the LPI at 3 seconds. How is it moving the needle? And then we can decide, and we have some data to look at, then try and about it. But then if you go and
Yeah.
switch it to 5, then you gotta wait another 2 years to start getting data and start evaluating. Probably 3 years before you can really evaluate it. So I hope that.
And I do just want to note too, one of the things that Scott and his team have looked at is validating the pedestrian crossing time in all the intersections. So they've looked at the cycle length for the whole, they are making some recommendations. Eric, what did you say you thought had been like 40 years since traffic
Okay,
signal
yeah, it
down,
was-
like timing downtown had been like
Even 90s,
totally redone? And so part of that has been Scott and his team confirming we have adequate time for the pedestrians to cross overall, not just within that LPI. So, it's not been just limited to this 3 second, it's been, are we providing adequate time throughout the downtown to give pedestrians across the street? And continuing to do some of this evaluation of what is still a fairly new.
So realistically, what is your projection as far as implementing the 20 mph passing travel grid in the downtown?
No, that's a great question. So, as soon as we get kind of our recommendations and the plans that we want to implement finalized, we're gonna start looking to implement this fall. We want to have school back in session, so that we're implementing with normal travel patterns in the downtown. And then a really critical piece of that is, one, we're gonna do it phased, so we'll pick corridors and implement. That will give us time to troubleshoot, adjust, make sure we're identifying any challenges. And then there will be an afterlook too. So we're gonna put this out there. We're going to monitor travel time changes, congestion changes, all of those things. We'll look at the data after that. And that will allow us to revisit this conversation, the 3 versus 5 second, when we have some of that understanding of what the signal timing changes we're proposing now are doing for progression and speeds through the
So
downtown.
is this conversation this evening for information purposes, or are you looking for a response or an opinion by CATC as far as moving forward?
We'd like to hear any questions you all have. I mean, we're still open to feedback. So that's why we wanted to come now, because we're still working through those final pieces. So if there's something we've missed, we want to know that now.
I'd say make a concrete
finish.
recommendation then, it is something that should have caught my attention and it did not hold it. However, it's very important context, which is that this data is all prior to any current LPIs. So a slight shifting in messaging of this looking from where should we be looking to implement to where should we be backfilling after our current efforts. Liberty and Ferry shifts from being an unaddressed problem to being a problem that has potentially been addressed and needs to be monitored. Because if those 10 pedestrian crashes are all from the period before there was an LPI, it's rather difficult to make any, as you just already noted, to restate your argument, it's rather difficult to make any concrete recommendation when we haven't even seen what this first step even did. We don't know if that's reduced that 10 crashes over a 5-year period to 5 or 2. We don't know that yet. So it would perhaps be premature to consider other options like changing the LPI timing because we haven't even evaluated this first one. So those highlighted intersections, I say the more interesting the ones are the ones that were identified where we didn't implement LPI at the time, and this study has come through and backfilled and said, those look like ones that we probably should have hit. So as opposed to it being, we left this really big one unaddressed, we're talking through an option that we know isn't really an option because eliminating that second right turn is not a thing that's gonna happen because neither the city nor ODOT are really going to want that because it's gonna create other problems. And frankly, the one thing you don't want to do when you're trying to create pedestrian safety is create vehicular headaches, because vehicular headaches cause erratic behavior, cause accidents, with the most vulnerable being bikes and pedestrians. So you could potentially be creating one problem by trying to solve the same problem. So I feel like there is a misalignment on the messaging here that could have really cleared up a lot of these questions from the get-go, which is there has been a proactive action taken by the city already. The safety is coming back in after the fact and saying, where should we have put a little bit more attention? Where should we continue focusing our attention? Liberty and Ferry now becomes a watch and see and evaluate type of place, which I was the sewer engineer for City of Oregon City. I've actually just been promoted to be the assistant city engineer for City of Lebanon. So I give these presentations myself. I'm giving you the kind of feedback I get when this happens to me and I don't message things great.
Noted, and we'll definitely, I think that's a great point.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm playing the part that is my biggest headache professionally, so I'm being a difficult audience member.
I think it's great though, because we wouldn't have been able to, it's too much to take on and to present something and I go, what, we didn't have it. I think you should just be honest and tell it upfront so that everybody knows and the citizens understand and can digest this, because not a lot of people are gonna be able to digest it and understand because they're already in a place of anger. And want to share that with everybody because we all know that everybody who uses the road and sidewalk and bike lanes, that they all are correct and everybody else around them is incorrect with how to use it. So you can't please everybody, but how do you make sure everybody's safe?
Well, this is an angering and frustrating topic. I don't think that, unlike in certain other parts of town, there's not really a single resident in Salem that doesn't have some opinion about our downtown.
Yes.
So we've all had personal experiences and near run-ins, probably on both sides, behind the wheel and in the street with this type of behavior. So we all have a very strong vested interest in seeing that this is done well.
In terms of feedback, I would, as a CATC member, suggest that any adjustments that can be made at minimal cost within the parameters of what you have available be implemented.
I would tend to agree.
I think that the suggestions and recommendations are pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And if you've got the data to support them, then move forward.
Yeah, let's wait and see before we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's let the LPI have some time to actually have an effect and see what happens. Let's put the other ones in.
Question, in other large cities on the West Coast, what length of LPI is used? Are there cities that use 5 seconds or more?
I would
Or more?
curious about that.
Yeah, I believe Seattle is 5 seconds. I'm not sure. I don't know if the city of Portland even has I don't think city, because they've already, their signals are timed. They have shorter blocks, so I don't know.
And they've also implemented whatever you call pedestrian only intervals.
Yeah.
So you don't need the LPI because
Oh,
it's pedestrian only, like near Powell's on Cooch.
They have some of those, but a big part of their pedestrian experience in the downtown is that they do progress their downtown at the 20 miles per hour as well. Because of their block distance, that allows for a bit of pedestrian flow. We can't quite achieve that here, but that has been a big piece of how Portland has handled it. And I mean, from my knowledge, I'm aware of cities using anything from 3 to 7 in terms of the LPI.
So I guess
3 is
I-
not.
I've heard all of the discussions and the why and the lack of data and wait for the data. I guess I feel like since changing from 3 to 5 seconds isn't a huge infrastructure cost, is there, rather than just wait for the data, is it possible to look at those cities that use 5, 6, 7 seconds and find out if they have data from 0 versus 2 or 3 seconds versus 5 to 7 seconds, rather than just like put 5 seconds on the back burner for 2 years? If some other city has experience or data that answers that question, then just go ahead and do it.
And I might actually to refine Cheryl's a little bit there, I'm acknowledging that this is a request that is outside of our scope of authority. It is a recommendation to Public Works. I'm aware that this is a request for a change of scope. However, what I'd be very curious to know is whether or not adjusting from 3 seconds to 4 seconds, or 3 seconds to 5, 3 to 6, etc. Obviously, can't test all of those, but it might be worthwhile to test. I think 5 seconds is not a unreasonable request. Does shifting the citywide LPI or a localized area of the LPI, because I'm hoping that your traffic modeler has a bit of an eye to be able to just kind of stare at those lines and see, by extending that little zone out just a hair, am I gonna be clipping a whole bunch of vehicles with that extra 2 seconds or not? But it might be worthwhile to see, does this adjustment break the traffic model? Because that to me is a concrete, it's not a monetary cost, but it's a operational cost of implementing that, would be if it takes away that really very real benefit. Because again, from the pedestrian point of view, if vehicles are able to go through downtown in a straight shot, that is a better driver experience. And just like angry drivers or unsafe drivers, happy drivers tend to be a little bit safer and they're less likely to not be paying attention. Although there's a little bit of a risk for zoning out, but there's also there's so much going on in downtown, it's hard not to have to be looking everywhere, because you're always having to shift over a lane here or there. So it's not an inactive driving experience. So you're just less frustrated. So that is a ancillary benefit as well to be considered from the pedestrians. And honestly, I think more so for the bikes, because bikes and vehicles have a fraught relationship of sharing the road together, fraught in mostly one direction, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, Cheryl.
I do just wanna note the time, and we do have at least one other action item that I would really like us to get through this evening.
I'm making the note
I-
that we've adjusted our end time nominally from 7 to 7:30.
Yes. We can look at the data from the best practices and start there. So I think that's a reasonable request. We can take that, and then maybe if you can transition to any last questions for Scott and his team, that would be great. You do have a community behind you.
Oh, one more?
A comment.
Oh, please feel free.
I just wanted to say, love the idea of the no turn on red. That sounds amazing, wherever we can implement that. You had made a comment that ODOT had implemented that somewhere else, based off of pedestrian.
Yeah, it's toward the top.
Yeah, so right here, this is the Union Gospel Mission on that corner, and there's it's usually a free right, so it's almost always green, but when a ped's there now, it stops and it has no right turn on red.
The only thing that I'll say is, and maybe this is an issue where these should actually be implemented, because there's not currently pedestrian buttons, but I would say let's avoid doing that wherever possible and just have it always be no turn on red. I believe the purpose of this activity was pedestrian and bicycle safety. As a cyclist who has been almost clipped a number of times traveling southbound commercial, coming with people coming and just turning on red onto commercial. Unfortunately, when you're on your bike, you don't have the opportunity to click a button to get people to stop there. So yeah.
To build on Dylan's question, I'm aware this would be transitioning, and I will remain mindful of the time. I'm aware this is transitioning from a low to a medium cost option. Are there, since so many bikes are non-metallic, are there non-loop detector options like radar that can pick up bikes? Because it feels like if that is a signal if that is a bit of data that could be tied into that right turn, that might help alleviate that concern.
I mean, there's thermal, I mean, we have thermal and radar that both pick up.
We don't, I mean, again, downtown, mostly there's no detection whatsoever, so I mean, that'd be a significant cost to add.
Yeah, because you don't have you'd have to put up the entire signal infrastructure. You'd have to put all the data wires up that way.
I think the cheapest model of just never no turns is the best and safest one, so just that one.
I'm zeroing in on the Liberty Street because that just, the no turn on red also feels like it would wind up being bad for passing, and so wanting to be more creative. But that's getting into that grant question, and maybe that's just shove that off for later.
I have two quick I think questions. One, can the slides be sent to us, please?
They'll be part of the public record, so they'll be shared.
Okay, and then the other, this was much later in the presentation. We didn't get through all the slides. When it comes to changing the progression, and you were mentioning that some cities use signage to inform drivers that they will be progressing at 20 miles an hour. Can those signs be made without using the word progress? Because the public doesn't get that.
Yeah, so that was my thing.
Traffic flows
Yeah.
at 20 miles an hour.
Time.
Okay,
Or
8 miles an hour, yeah. Just,
Well, we would do some press releases and some targeted sharing of this information
right,
through our public information officers, whose job is to make sure we're speaking
English.
to everybody. Yeah.
And undoubtedly you'll look at signage that other cities use who've already figured it out.
I guess unless there are other pressing questions, I will certainly take the hint and recommend we close this for future discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next action item.
All right, I believe next one up is, revised code.
Okay.
One major.
So, updates to the Salem revised code. So in your packets, you all received, the proposed changes that incorporate, the conversation we've had over the last couple meetings, as well as some legal review. Legal did have some pretty substantial changes that I want to highlight for those. And then we did receive edits from one commissioner ahead of time. That's the markups that you received. If you picked stuff up over here, and we'll be planning to incorporate the majority of those edits as well. So, and the reason I wanted to at least make sure we get to this action item this evening is because if CATC is comfortable making the recommendation to move this forward, it's slated to go in with larger scale updates to the revised code related to boards and commissions and would actually go to council this month. So that is the balance of the timing, is that it could go forward as part of that package and get adopted through that. So I will walk through kind of at a high level some of the comments, just so I can provide some orientation from you all to kind of what has changed for chapter 5 in particular.
And could you clarify, in order to take the next step here today for the coming city council meeting, are you hoping in the remaining 14 minutes that we will get through the revisions of both documents? Or are you just prioritizing chapter 5 and we'll do what we can with bylaws?
I would think I would make the request that we plan to prioritize chapter 5 because we need a recommendation from CATC to go to council for adoption.
Okay.
The bylaws are ours.
Yes.
So those we can deal with at a future meeting.
Thank you.
And there are some other important updates I want to share under discussion too, so.
Okay, so we're maybe only looking at chapter 5 right now.
Yeah.
And punting on the bylaws. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We may need a motion for that since it shouldn't change to the agenda.
I so move.
Second.
Good enough for me.
So the bylaws will come back to you at the next meeting. We will just try to get through SRC and the discussion items. Okay, so for the first section, so section 5.010, there were no substantial changes to this from legal. We did get a note from one of you to include the purpose statement here. The recommendation was to include the purpose statement under the advisory functions. I would like to move it up and have it be in this section at the top. And as noted in the comments provided, that would then align this description of the commission with what is in the bylaws.
So I'm sorry, so moving the pink thing here up to
Yes.
5.010.
No issue with
Bigger
that.
on the screen because it says super tiny and I
Can't see.
maybe can hold it further and I can read it, but I cannot actually do it.
Can you bring it up on the screen?
That's so much better.
I don't know.
Okay, no
I
worries.
can't remember where I saved this.
This is going to be me.
Yes, we're on Vanessa's login, so I don't have access to what I have saved on here. I apologize for that. But the addition, I can read the addition for everyone. The commission shall be an advisory body which functions to advise the Public Works Director and City Council upon request of the director or their designee or council on all transportation related issues within the city's transportation system. So that would just be added to that one sentence we have under section 5.01 that is essentially creating the commission.
I have no issue with that.
Great.
Good.
Fine.
Section 5.02, legal has asked that we remove this because they view it as repetitive with some of the other code they have about creation of the commission and appointment of members. That is under city council's purview. And then also our bylaws where we covered some of the same material in terms of makeup. So their interest is in consolidating and eliminating areas where we may be repetitive.
Any concerns?
No,
None.
No.
And then the largest change here was, again, kind of at that repetitive angle, legal was asking that we combine what was section 5.020 and 030 and to just have the advisory functions. And then the other large change was their request to add the addition of some decision-making criteria. So the three that were added are when holding hearings and making recommendations, the commission shall apply the following criteria. Recommendations by the commission shall comply with adopted policies of city council, including but not limited to goals and policies in the city's comprehensive plan, which does include the transportation system plan. So that is one component of that. All recommendations shall comply with federal, state, and city standards. And then the commission shall thoroughly evaluate all sides of the issue, giving due consideration to public testimony, written comments, and evidence presented during the hearing process. All perspectives shall be weighed impartially to ensure the recommendations reflect a balanced and inclusive understanding of the matter at hand. So a couple big things that I think this kind of rework and combination allowed us to do was to get rid of some of the phrasing and language that we had struggled with in those sections in the past, and put some more clear parameters around what we're doing, not what we're not doing.
This is much clearer and more succinct, and it solves, I agree, this solves most of the issues we were struggling with.
And then there, I think, Cheryl had a comment about facilitating or encouraging. I think if you all can recommend this with the substantive changes, or with no substantive changes, but the minor editorial, we can make that change in what you adopt tonight. So I recognize you don't have a clean version that has that in front of you. So if we make a motion and we're comfortable with the changes as discussed, then the motion just needs to include asking staff to address the editorial changes that we want to see.
Did we have an opinion on facilitating versus?
I wouldn't make a motion if you're,
Well, are people able to read what the edit is since the stuff like, do people know what we're talking about, or does it need to be read out loud?
Well, I think,
Let me read it for you.
yes.
Just, so the edit was to D under upon request of the Public Works Director or their designee or City Council, the commission shall have the following duties. And D previously read to serve as a liaison between the community and the director, facilitating public engagement and input on non-land use transportation related matters. And the proposal was to change that to encouraging, which I agree. I think that's we won't be asking you all to facilitate anything directly, but we are asking you to encourage others to participate and connect to your communities. So that would be the editorial there.
with that said, I would make a motion to approve and recommend the proposed changes.
Second.
I am afraid I will have to read. We can hold a vote. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? I don't feel strongly enough to make a stink about anything, so I think it's better to just get this approved, so. I don't feel that way.
Majority, yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's what it's for.
4-1.
yeah, perfect.
Okay, so bylaws will come back to you.
Sorry, and then there was also the second comment on the first page about upon request, of Public Works or City Council. the
That was what
commission
I was hoping to discuss.
shall have the following duties. So the comment is that it doesn't say that there's a possibility of CATC initiating a
I was
topic.
gonna recommend an edit simply that, like something along the lines of commission or commission at their discretion. Something along those lines to give the commission the ability to set its own agenda if they so decide. That'd be nice.
Can you, first of all, I apologize, I missed that one in the notes.
Yeah.
So that's a friendly amendment?
It can be.
Okay.
Can you give me an example of what you think might, like, what was coming to mind with that edit?
I feel like. So something isn't specifically coming to mind, except. When Beth was new at her first meeting, she was saying, I wanna talk about safe routes to school. And that was not an agenda item, and it was just kind of, oh, wait for the TSP. And then, around that same time, there was a meeting where we were asked to kind of just brainstorm what we want to hear about. So I don't have a specific thing in mind. I just want the ability for us to ask for a topic or an agenda item.
I have a specific edit in mind. Upon request of the Public Works Director or their designee or City Council, or at discretion of the commission shall have the following duties.
That's also upon request? I don't
I
know.
think where I would clarify is there is nothing in this that says we can't have something be an agenda item versus something that we're actually advising Public Works. So that's my concern about leaving it too open-ended there with that, is that there may not be anything to be in that advisory role on in that exact moment, but that doesn't mean that it can't be an agenda item that we still discuss. So
Okay,
some distinction between when we're operating in that true advisory function. So some things for that being like neighborhood parking changes or control changes at an intersection where we're getting a specific topic that we're being asked to cover. Versus we can hold a meeting and not be calling into like those criteria that were put there were because we'd be in a hearing type setting with the advisory role to either council or the Public Works Director. We are not precluded from having an agenda item that is a safe routes to school discussion and identifying where that should fit into other like upcoming efforts.
I think the issue specifically between Cheryl and Kenneth is that adjusting some of the verbiage permits CATC from adding a issue or item to the agenda to be discussed. Whereas as it's currently structured, it does not clearly allow us that option.
Yeah, and I mean, and maybe it's as simple as noting that these are not that this is not an all-inclusive or a fully enumerated list of duties, or or simply adding a fifth option E, other duties as proposed, other duties as proposed by the commission and approved by Public Works.
so I feel like maybe we don't need to do that, because if I rewind to what Kara was saying, I guess my point isn't, could we please discuss something? My point is, one or more of us has a concern that we want to give input on.
Yep.
But if we are at a meeting and we say, CATC would like to provide input on X, could you please provide an agenda item and a presentation or whatever, so that we can, we want to advise you on X that you hadn't brought to us. Then when it gets on the agenda, it becomes upon request of Public Works Director.
Yeah, I
If we
guess,
ask for it and you say, yes, we can talk about that, here's the agenda item, please advise us. It'll happen under the current wording.
Yes, it will.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then I'm good
So-
with no
because
changes.
I had two pieces of heartburn with this, both of which I think could be addressed in the bylaws instead
That's what
by.
I was gonna also propose, is that this could also be spelled out, I think, more clearly in the bylaws.
Okay.
Because I also didn't love the compliance with adopted plans, because I think that there have been more than a handful of cases where CATC's opinions have diverted from the TSP, where we have found that document wanting in certain ways. And so having to be acknowledging that it is important for us to generally be consistent with that document. I also believe it is important for CATC to retain its ability to note when it's making certain decisions or perhaps having certain deliberations that we don't necessarily agree with that.
I think that would be where this piece, again, kind of bringing this back to that, this is really aimed at like the holding hearings piece.
Mhm.
And in that case, we do need to be, like,
Compliant.
the comprehensive plan is our, like, that is the city. So you're not gonna see recommendations from staff that are in conflict with the comprehensive plan. So that is what that bullet there is kind of aimed at. Again, that doesn't change that an issue or a project can come in front of CATC and CATC can have an opinion on that project or that thing and make that known to council. But the recommendations, the city cannot implement things that are not compliant with our comprehensive plan. So that's where that came.
I'd like to make a motion that we extend the meeting by how many minutes would help, 5 or 10?
Maybe we might need 10, just
10.
optimistic, yeah.
Maximum 10 minutes to end at 7:40. I'm moving.
Yeah, I second
Second.
that. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
So sort of in synopsis is moving that first pink block.
Yep.
Up to 5.101.
Yep.
Sort of gives us the broad thing. And then 5.020, which is just about the advisory function and not necessarily what we can or can't do, but just like the,
Discuss, yep.
our role is to the bigger, whatever. Okay.
Yep.
Encouraging.
And then changing one word.
And yeah, no, that's fine.
encouraging, yeah. Yeah, we
Yes.
did have positive.
Done and.
Do we need to vote on all that?
I actually don't think we do.
Well, we already
Never
had
did.
a motion that passed 4-1 on accepting these changes.
Mhm.
So, and then we entered into a conversation regarding the possibility of a friendly amendment, and that appears to have been
The friendly
resolved.
amendment has been withdrawn.
Right,
So did we,
so
We're good.
did we have appropriate motions and decisions about changing from facilitating to encouraging?
Well, the CH2.
That was with the editorial.
So friendly public
Okay.
comment, point of order, the original motion carried, so that motion is in effect. The group's Robert Rules of Order.
We're having a miscellaneous
We
unaccounted
did
for.
call a motion to reconsider, and the person to propose that motion has to be on somebody that voted in favor. So Kenneth, you would not be able to call the motion, but somebody else would be able to. And then you would need to propose an additional motion to then pass the amended bylaws.
I don't think we're amending it any further than what was approved. So,
Okay.
Yeah, it's staying as it was.
yep, so.
So it's the existing 4-1 vote on changing the one word. And
Well,
other,
and shifting the other thing.
and other than that, it's right, and shifting the thing and it's, okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
But not the
Great.
friendly amendment.
right.
Correct, the friendly amendment's been withdrawn
Okay.
explicitly. So no,
Thank you. for
I saw that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You scared
You
me
were very close to right.
Okay, with our remaining 8 minutes, I have actually 3 updates for you. So new members for CATC. We currently have 4 positions open. As of the last review by the city recorder's office who handles this process, we had 3 applications. So even with this process, we will have 1 more spot remaining open.
Sorry, what was the timeline of when there were three, as of when there were three applications?
That was in, April was when they started the process for, that I'm gonna talk about for getting the new members appointed.
So then Dylan might have applied for the last spot,
That is
the one
possible.
remaining spot after those
Yep.
three.
And the reason that it's taking so long is because boards and commissions are appointments are the purview of city council, and they go twice per year with, updates to, recommendations for boards and commissions. So they do a mid-year appointment, which they are finalizing the schedule for now to get the members that we had at that point. That's kind of why they draw that line, so they can process applications, all of that. So we should have new members following this mid-year appointment. And then they do another appointment at the end of the year. So there's kind of two opportunities to get appointments. So that's why the delay from application to actually being seated on the commission is kind of where you fall in that application timeline to hit either that mid-year appointment from city council or the end of the year appointment.
I feel like that information is not readily findable online by your average person. It would be great if the boards and commissions pages, like the vacancies page, or just put a little I know it's not you, just
Yeah.
pass this along. It's very helpful.
Deadline.
It's very helpful to know that. And then also that means Dylan's timeline probably misses this upcoming, like Dylan wouldn't be appointed until end of year.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dylan.
Or just be hanging out.
Y'all come back now, you hear?
I will pass that on to the city recorder's office. All of that
Okay.
process is handled by them.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so upcoming engagement opportunities. So I think they got passed around. There's both an English and Spanish version of a flyer. So this is our encouraging, yes. Please take as many as you would like. We brought like 30 copies. We would love for you all to share these. So
Back around.
it is our Salem Safe Streets for All action plan that we have kicked off about 2 or 3 months ago now.
Mhm.
And this is our first touch point with the community. There are 3 open houses on there. They are all the same. They are just in different locations throughout the city. And there's also going to be a website to visit. So we wanted to make you all aware of that, make sure you know to attend and participate, and ask you to share it out with others. And then the other one, which I don't have a pretty flyer for yet, is the Fisher Road urban upgrades project. So there is gonna be on June 23rd, and we'll make sure this is in the minutes. There's an open house at the Boys and Girls Club on Lancaster Drive. And then along with that open house, there will also be an online open house. So you can participate in person or online. It will be the same information, the same material. And if you attended the first one or took the survey when it came out at the beginning of the project, you will get a notification.
Sorry, what's the date and time of June 23rd Fisher Road?
So Tuesday, June 23rd from 6 to 7:30.
So that's a partial conflict with,
It is with,
okay,
with the,
that's unfortunate.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Unfortunate timing.
You,
They are all the same. So all 3 of the
Okay.
action plan are all the same. And the Fisher Road one is drop-in. So it's more open house style, not like a timed presentation or anything like that. So
and do these have a specific presentation?
no, they'll have I believe they're also more open house participation style as well. So we were bummed about the conflict. We're also excited to have 2 things to be out talking to people about at the same time. So we're navigating that. And then the last one, I did just want to share an update with you all on some things that you might be seeing in the future. One thing that I am working on, getting to the agenda items and topics of discussion, is some coordination with engineering on how projects are going to come to CATC in the future. And Fisher Road is a good example of that. So, they're working on a number of projects, specifically bond-related projects. And we are talking about at what point do those come to CATC, to provide input on, different alternatives and things like that. So, I just wanted to make that, especially given some of the conversation around the agenda and what's on there. We are having that conversation and looking to get engineering to start bringing a number of projects, to you all to share, I think, a little bit earlier in the process than we have. been
And does
historically.
that possibly relate to my feedback about the new Union Street construction?
That's a perfect example of something that we would like to get in front of you
Okay.
all sooner.
I'd like more follow-up on that, but we don't need to
Yes.
spend time on that in the meeting. Sorry
Um,
for people who didn't understand that.
No, those conversations had already been, so we have Fisher Road, which we've had one community open house on, we'll be doing the second one. And then the other one that we're looking at timing for is the State Street project, which there's also been some community engagement done. We are kind of ready to share out what we heard from that, how that's been incorporated in the design and moving forward. So already on the radar, but a good example of we would rather bring this to you all now, get your input, answer questions, get thoughts rather than get questions after things have been built. So those are my updates for items under commission discussion.
All right, well then I'm gonna call for a motion to adjourn.
I so moved,
And second, I think we're all good. Let's call it a night.
and we did it before 7:40,
Yes, we did.
but we needed all 10 minutes.
We did.
Very good. That was a
Wait.
rocking